Welcome aboard Pink Monorail. I'm your pilot, Michelle Valladolid, and next to me is my co-pilot, Noe Valladolid.
Hey, everybody.
In part 1, we talked with Joe Lanzisero about some of the stuff he's worked on. In part 2, we're going to talk about the origins of today's animatronics. We left a few out, not on purpose. For example, Walt Disney had Buddy Ebsen, who you might know from the Beverly Hillbillies, come in and be filmed dancing from 4 angles. Walt has his Imagineers build a small dancing man from Ebsen's performance. It has been displayed at Disneyland several times and still works. It was a precursor to Mr. Lincoln. And now, part 2 of our interview with the fabulous Joe Lanzisero.
I do this talk called Floaters, Swimmers, and Divers to help them understand that when you design something, you have to be thinking about how people engage with the experience. And at Disney, I mostly learned this doing the cruise ships, because the cruise ships, I think, were the first Disney product that was going after a more diverse audience, and maybe even non-Disney people. In fact, they knew in order to make it work. In fact, they were gun shy at first of putting too much Disney on the ships because there was no family cruises, right? The cruise market was young adults who were looking to get and retirees, right? And not so much in between. And so they didn't want to have too much Disney on it. So the initial designs, the first early designs, like for the Disney Magic, there was hardly any Disney on the ship. I had worked on the kids areas, because this was not so long after doing. Once I did Toontown, I became the kids guy. I was the one that did all the kids stuff. So we did this presentation to Michael Eisner, and I thought it was great because he goes, "Where's the Disney?" Because they didn't want it was DDC was running a Disney development company. It wasn't Imagineering who's running the design of the ships at first. And in fact, it was after that meeting that he brought Imagineering in, and then I got involved. And we started, we literally went through the ship and tried to figure out, all the places where we could put different, and we always thought about different levels of Disney. And this got back to the floaters, swimmers, and divers, because floaters are the people that come into an experience that are maybe not, they know enough about the brand, about Disney. Oh, they know Mickey Mouse, they've maybe seen a couple movies, but you still have to, have enough there in the experience, almost taking the brand out of it, and just the core experience. It's got to be fun. It's got to be interesting. It's got to communicate. So that's the floaters. Swimmers are those people that go into the experience, probably have a little more engagement with the brand. They probably maybe watch the TV shows, whatever. So you can throw more stuff at them. And then there's the divers, you guys. And those are the people that, know Shuriken, know all those stories. Yeah, so you got to make sure you're still putting, but you have to think about all three groups. If you're just doing that, for me, I think one of the failures of Galaxy's Edge is that they assumed everybody was a diver. They assumed everybody was an uber Star Wars fan, and would be forgiving that, the characters that they saw in all the movies. They didn't think about the floaters. And I'm not an uber Star Wars fan. So I went in there and I said, okay,
I'm a swimmer.
What?
There's going to be a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Maybe a Wookiee.
Right. Exactly. But and I was in some of those early meetings with those guys that were, initially doing the early designs. And the earlier designs I thought were better because they were taking you to Toth, all the planets, and the characters that you knew from the film that really established the brand. Those are the things that people remember.
I think they got a little much into their own heads.
Oh, yeah, I would say.
I have trouble really complaining about it too much because I'm not a theme park designer. And I don't really like it when people who aren't try to second guess theme park designers. Because I hold them sacred.
Yeah. Actually, that's very respectful.
Had a guy taking a Bob Ross Superman logo and saying, "See how much better it is in AI."
Oh, the Alex Ross.
Alex Ross.
Bob Ross.
Sorry.
That would be nice if Bob Ross painted a happy little
F. Yeah, and Alex Ross. Sorry.
Michael Eisner gets a bad rap too much. I have nothing but great things. Just all my experience with Michael was great, and he really gave me so many fantastic opportunities. He made my career. Gave me Toontown, and I think he was after Frank. I mean, he never got.
He never got over Frank.
He never got his footing back.
I was lucky enough
Frank
to have met Frank, and he was a doll.
Oh, Frank was great. Frank hosted a dinner for Dave Burkhart and I after we finished Toontown. Hadn't even opened yet. They didn't know if it was going to be successful, whatever. And at Club 33, and we got to bring our families, and just some of the key people. And it was just us and Frank for the night, and he was just there to thank us. He goes, "I know how." He said how difficult these things are, and he was just such a real human being. I think
he was the Jiminy Cricket of the company.
Yeah, he should. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the next thing I want to talk about is Mr. Lincoln. I saw the original Mr. Lincoln at Disneyland and also at the D23 exhibit. Bob Gurr tells me that he threw a chair at him.
Lincoln threw a chair at Bob Gurr.
Yes.
I've heard that story. Yes. He was over at when they had the Tahunga facility over in North Hollywood where they built a lot of the sets and the props and things. First, there was Pelican Alley. I was fortunate when I first started at Imagineering in the late 80s, Pelican Alley was still over in Mapo. Mapo was the building across from
which was financed by Mary Poppins.
That's why they called it Mapo, Mary Poppins. Yep. And they built, that for me, when I remember walking in the first, that was like sacred ground. Because it's like, the monorails for Walt Disney World was built there. All most of the animatronics, the pirates were built there. So walking through there, and then I got when I did the Splash Mountain for Tokyo, that was the last project I worked on where they were building the animatronics in Mapo, and then they moved animatronic production to Tahunga, which was over North Hollywood, a great big facility over by the Burbank Airport, and that's like where we did Toontown and all the projects I worked on after that. But that was so cool to be walking down. That to me it was sacred ground. It was the same like when I first started working at Imagineering. My first office was not really an office. It was a 2 sawhorses and a piece of plywood in the model shop. Now this is the same model shop where Walt walked through and looked at all those shows. Mm-hmm. And it was so cool. I had my little area there. Joe Rohde was next to me on one side. Nina Ray Vaughan was there.
Oh wow!
Who else was down there? Chris Runco. And then we all ultimately got our own offices. But it was like when you first started at Imagineering, you started there, and then they moved you away. Yeah. Okay. I digress. I even forgot how I got there. But
we were talking about Mr. Lincoln.
So over at Tahunga, they always had. He was just, and he wasn't like in a glass case or anything. He was just down. I remember first time walking through, and I think it was with Matt Pretty, who was in charge of the facility at the time. I go, "Is that the original Lincoln?" He goes, "Oh yeah, that's Lincoln. Okay, let's go over what we're doing."
It belongs in a museum.
Yeah, that's what I said. It should be under glass.
Yeah. Some parts of it are at the Walt Disney Family Museum. Go see the Walt Disney Family Museum.
It's lovely.
Now, Lincoln, what were the people harassing Lincoln?
Oh yeah, the pavilion next door was a Japanese pavilion, and they handed out ball bearings to people.
Because there was one of the manufacturers.
Because they manufactured ball bearings. And so the people would bring their ball bearings into Mr. Lincoln and try to make the actor blink. Or try to make the actor duck.
Because they didn't believe that it was a robot. They didn't believe that it was a robot.
So they would throw ball bearings. And every night, Imagineers had to come and clean out all the ball bearings from the floor.
Wow. Wouldn't it have been easier just to go next door and say, "Stop giving out ball bearings"?
It says that he was a tough guy, though. He could take all the sets and still deliver his speech.
What an actor.
Yeah, what an actor.
And from 1975 to 1979, Aaron Fechter did the Wolfpack 5 animatronics show at multiple amusement parks, and went on to go to create in 1980 Showbiz Pizza and the Rockafire Explosion.
Now, did Showbiz Pizza predate Chuck E. Cheese, or did it become
No, 1977 was the Pizza Time Theater in Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, okay.
And I remember going as a teenager with some friends in Honolulu, and it went dunk, dunk every time it moved. And then I saw it as an adult when I brought Alice, and Garner Holt had taken over, and the movements were so smooth. I'm like, somebody from Disney must have done this. I didn't know about Garner Holt back then.
People are actually buying the old ones and reprogramming them and fixing them up so that they can play any music they want. But they preserve the stage, they preserve the curtains.
Oh, really?
So they'll do the show, but now they'll be singing all of the modern. So they'll rip them out if you want to do a party or something.
Oh, that's
every 15
very
minutes
very
or so,
enterprising.
The curtains go up, and it's the old animatronics from when we were kids, and now they're performing modern music. So,
For when you were kids.
For when I was a kid.
In 1981, Fairy Tale Forest in Efteling in the Netherlands, called Sprookjesbos, which was Fairy Tale Forest walkthrough, got 92 animatronics.
I've never been to Efteling. Have you?
That was an entire podcast.
You know, I know. Ryan just went with. He took his kids, and he proclaimed it the best theme park on the planet. You know,
I understand it's beautifully. Beautifully done.
I'm a fan of Anton Peck, who was the Walt Disney of that park, but he was a children's book illustrator. Beautiful.
And
children's books.
I've seen pictures of this attraction. In fact, this morning I was looking at them, and they all look like they're carved out of wood.
Yeah.
Just gorgeous.
Yeah, just that Europe. There's that European flair.
One of the
old world European.
Exactly.
Flair. Yeah.
One of the coaster sites has a really in-depth look at the attraction.
Excuse me.
I can't remember which one right now. Coasterville or Coastermania or one of those has all sorts of photos and step-by-step walkthrough of each story in the attraction. It was really nice to look at. I really fell into a black hole there. In 1982, Ben Franklin walks down the stairs.
Yeah. So that was one of those, one of the coolest things working for Imagineering is always to be able to do the behind the scenes, go and see how things were done. And that was the mechanics of that whole show, the American Adventure, with all those moving platforms. And again, I think about the context, the time when it was done, and how amazing it is. But again, it's like watching a great ballet performer or a great musician. They make it look easy, but the reality is, all the work, all the brains, everything that goes into it. But I think, a great performance, a great work of art should look like it just happened in front of you. And that was the American Adventure. You don't think about all that went into it.
I read a book about making it, the making of it, by a former Imagineer. And he wrote about that opening day. They didn't get open until halfway through the day because things kept crashing. The timing needed to put forward this perfect performance.
I mean, when you think about Epcot on opening day, or just all the things they tried to do, the universe of motion, all the great figures that were in there, the energy pavilion. There's a freaking theater that comes to life and breaks apart and
right.
All the things.
I knew about it, but my parents didn't.
Yeah.
They're like, what's happening? In 1983, AVG, founded by the former head of electronic animation research for Disney, opens Bullwinkle's Restaurants. And 1986, King Kong at Universal, Bob Gurr, again, did not throw a chair at him. But the largest animatronic of the time.
And breathed
banana breath.
It's genius.
Yeah.
And notice they a lady who worked with us at Disney, she worked with Bob on that, Arden Ashley. And I guess they used like inflatable part of it because he was so big, rather than putting superstructure in a lot of it that would make it heavier. And again, this is the genius of Bob Gary. So why don't we use some of it, just inflatable parts? So it was really brilliant what they did.
Genius.
Yeah.
Tons.
Yeah, it would have cost a lot more too.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Universal was happy.
Yeah.
It's a shame that burned down.
At least and
I
you
don't
know,
like the new
I-
one
and
as
again,
much.
I'm old school. I would much rather see an animatronic
Mhm.
than a screen,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
with something filmed. And at least in Florida, have you been on the Florida one?
Yes.
At least they did do the one big animatronic
Yeah.
at the end. So it's not.
I like the
all
way he
movies.
shakes.
Yeah.
In 1989, The Wicked Witch of the West, which we were just talking
Right.
about.
She was A1000.
She was A1000,
Yeah.
not Sarkos.
No, you're right. She's Sark. There was
I
a
think-
fine line between the two, I think.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah.
And she just moved so fluidly.
Yeah.
But like I said, Alice Davis hated how they were programmed because she didn't like that they had balance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she didn't like that balance that they would move, that they would make. She wanted them to move more like animated drawing. In 1999, AVG again.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting comment because there is that fine line between, you know, and what made it probably everything up until that one seem almost the Disney-esque quality because the movement was more like Disney animation. You know, the way they anticipated things, and again, being an animator, I'm very sensitized to that. You know, how the way they overlap the movement. You know, the anticipation, because and most of them were programmed by animators or
Right.
misunderstood.
Or Davy
understood
Crockett
animation.
fighting.
Or Davy fighting, yes, of course. Went to Cal Arts with me.
We're going to pause for just a moment to hear a word from our sponsor. And we're back.
In 1999, AVG creates about 140 animatronics for Universal Florida. Same guy who did Bullwinkles, former Disney electronic animator.
Larry Nicolai worked there.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
They did Dudley Do-Right, Cat in the Hat, and Popeye and Bluto. And in 2001, the largest animatronic, the Spinosaurus, was created for the film Jurassic Park. And that was done by Stan Winston Studios. Thank you, Lenny. And that was the largest animatronic at the time.
Wow.
Universal Creative did a copy of it for the ride, but I don't know who under Universal Creative. I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find anything.
I don't know if they actually if they have any in-house capabilities.
No, I think they go to Landmark or somebody like that. Yeah. In 2008 and 2009, they made a new Lincoln at Disneyland, and I was at the opening for that. They had the actor who did the voice, and then they had he played Bela Lugosi.
Martin Landau?
Martin Landau.
Martin Landau. Oh.
They had Martin Landau, and then Anthony Hopkins just happened to show up with his grandkids because he takes them to Disneyland all the time. So he came up and danced a little jig for everybody.
That's hysterical.
And one time I was waiting in line for Thor, and I told a little kid that sometimes Thor's dad is in Disneyland with his grandkids, and he wears a hat, so to look out for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's when they gave you the haircut. They put earphones on you, and you got the haircut.
Yeah,
from
the binaural sound.
Yeah, from Disney MGM Studios had that, and I was like, this is weird. 2019, the new A1000s came out for Hondo, and in 2024, an audio animatronic Walt Disney was announced, and that's as far as I go.
How do you feel about Walt as an AA?
I'm gonna go see it. I'm gonna marvel over the technology, but I'm gonna feel like a ghoul.
Cool.
His granddaughter is not happy about it. She wants the same uprising they had over taking out Mr. Lincoln and putting in the Muppets. She was like, "You saved Mr. Lincoln, saved my grandpa."
I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I think just like putting the statue, you know, in the hub, I think it's important because there's a whole generations, you know, that see Disney as a brand and not as a man. You know, and it's good to remind everybody he was a man. He was a real live human being who started all of this. So in some ways, you know, creating some experience that honors him and makes people aware of him is good, but it's just kind of creepy and weird that, you know, it's a robot. I mean,
people are arguing, well, did he ask Lincoln's grandchildren to make Mr. Lincoln?
Not the same.
Yeah.
Because he was the president of the United States. He represented the people. He represented the ideal. Walt was an artist. He was an entertainer. He was not elected president. That's two completely different arguments.
Yeah, that's true.
He let us into his family. He shared that experience with us, but I mean, it should just be.
Well, it's like he said, Walt. I drink. Walt Disney doesn't drink. I smoke. Walt Disney doesn't smoke.
Right, and all the pictures where he's pointing with two fingers, that's because they
airbrushed out the cigarette.
Oh, I remember on the Magic and the Wonder, you know, we have the Walt Disney Theater, and we have that great photo.
Oh, it's a beautiful photo.
And actually, Michael Eisner, I can't remember who it was. There were two camps. There was leave the cigarette in his hand, and there was the we need to take the cigarette out of his hand. And the we need to take the cigarette out of his hand group won in the end. But it was interesting, and I actually sat in on one of the discussions about it. You know, that you know, this is him. It was part of who he was. I don't know why you have to hide it too, because everybody knew he was a smoker.
It literally killed him.
Yeah, killed him.
Now there's other animatronics I didn't talk about. I didn't talk about Pirates of the Caribbean.
You didn't talk about it. I remember they made such a big deal about it, and I've never seen it. The one in the Avatar boat ride.
Oh,
the
yeah,
Na'vi
I've
figure.
seen. I haven't seen it. My daughter has seen it.
Yeah,
says it's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing, but again, I think it's a little bit like The Witch. You know, that it's so human. I think when they become so human, you forget. It's like Hondo. You're marveling at the technology, and it takes you out of the story.
And she did. She marveled at the technology.
Right. And so it takes you out of the story rather than being emotionally engaged with the moment. You know, and that's what story does.
But I think the floaters. I don't think the floaters are impressed by the technology. I think they say, "Oh, giant woman."
Yeah. Yeah, but still, but I think they're not. They're saying giant woman, but it's not something that's emotionally engaging them. And I think the key to making all Disney experiences, any entertainment experience, great, you've got to emotionally engage people, make them laugh, make them cry, make them angry, make them think. You know, something that turns on what makes us.
You can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't have a good story, you're sunk.
That's right.
We're going to take another quick pause to listen to more words from our sponsors. And we're back.
Okay, so I do another talk that I've done at the UX conference called Fine-Tuning the Magic. And I go through, and it's all case studies of where there's this thing called the curse of knowledge, where you think the person across from you knows what you know, and there's this little game where you say, okay, I'm thinking of probably the most popular song ever written, and I'm going to tap it out on the table. Okay, and you're sure everybody's going to know it, so I'm going to tap it. I say,
happy birthday to you.
Well, okay. Most people don't get it.
They're thinking Beatles.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but the curse of knowledge is that you assume. Well, everybody knows that,
Not everybody knows that.
Not everybody knows that. So I use that as kind of the basis for this talk. And one of the rides I used as a case study was the Buzz Lightyear ride, because that was the first attempt that Disney had at taking the person who loved the Omnimover ride, and looking at the things and then giving it the gaming aspect. But they did not, give the gaming has such clear feedback. Like when you talk, you go up to the machine and you know what your role is. And I think it didn't work so great the first time out, because the technology was kind of funky and you really couldn't see did I score there? So then when we did it in Japan, I had the benefit of learning from what they did at Walt Disney World. And so I talk about how, okay, for gamers, and there was a list of things that what gamers expect out of a ride, and they failed on this, and this, And then we tried to repair it, or fix it by, giving them feedback on, putting haptics in the gun so that you saw the laser, so you knew exactly which one was yours. I don't know if you've ridden the one in Japan, but
Not yet.
I think we took care of all the things that weren't working, but it was that same thing, trying to remember there's a whole generation that grew up with a whole different level of engagement with the experience, with a gaming experience. Yeah.
So something like Haunted Mansion, even though the animatronics are older, their movements are slower, the entire experience, you're in a scary house, and you're being moved through a scary house, and by the end, there's still somebody that wants to follow you home. As opposed to Avatar, you're in an alien planet, you're on an alien river, you're on an alien foliage, or an alien thing, and then all of a sudden you get to a point where, oh, that's a really nice robot,
right? And
you're no longer on that alien planet, and then you're back into the alien scene. You're like, oh, it stuck out so well that it sort of broke the illusion for everything else.
Yeah. The other thing, the Haunted Mansion, especially the graveyard, they're doing things that you have a frame of reference for. They're on a teeter-totter. They're having tea. They're singing. I mean,
there's a mummy.
Yeah, I mean, these are all things. You have some frame of reference for that that allows you to connect with it again on a human level, right? So, getting back to that dinosaur, the caveman rather, that's pointing at the mammoth, you don't need a whole lot of movement, but you're still being moved because the overall story context in which it's being presented, the way they've posed it, its place in the larger context of the experience, creates a moment then that grabs you and touches you in some way.
And that's more than just a cave painting or something that you see in an art gallery. It's a three-dimensional.
Yeah, it's right. My argument for dimensional animatronics and sets versus screens. I think everything. A screen is ubiquitous now. We carry this.
A screen is every day.
Every day, but sitting like what we're doing right now. Sitting with other human beings, or in this case robots, but having having some kind of exchange with that experience in a real world goes way deeper than having an exchange with the screen.
That's why movies with practical effects look so much better than ones with computer ones, in my opinion.
I totally agree. That's why I love Tim Burton and Wes Anderson. I love their films for that reason.
And that was part 2 of our interview with the fabulous Joe Lanzisero. Thank you, Joe. We really appreciate it. Next time on Pink Monorail Podcast, we're going to be talking about a fellow you may have heard of named Walt Disney. Finally.
A special shout out to our sponsor, Circa 1955. Nicole is the founder of Luxillume, a small company that makes candles, wax melts, and room sprays. She creates scents that capture the season, nature, or wonderful memories. She also takes commissions for larger orders, such as weddings or company gifts. It turns out that Nicole is also a huge Disney fan and has a line called Circa 1955. She creates scents inspired by all things Disney. This includes the parks, attractions, treats, and films. She creates each formula and batch of candles herself. For every one scent she's released, she's probably made over 200 trials just to get the smell right. Don't take my word for it. Go to circa1955.com, order a candle, and use promo code PINK15. That's PINK15 to get 15% off your purchase. Support a small company that also gives back to the community. You're going to love it. Another shout out to Jim Hill for hosting Pink Monorail on his podcast network. The Jim Hill Podcast Network also includes Looking at Lucasfilm, The Disney Dish, I Want That, and Fine Tuning. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review for each podcast. Have a great day.